Alright, welcome guys. Episode 1 of Off the Record with A&A here today. Just going to be giving you a quick rundown of what we're going to be talking about today. Mass, you want to run them through?
Yeah, sure. So today we're going to be covering the national championship recap from last night. Then we're going to jump into some college basketball. We'll give you our thoughts on the AP poll. And then we're going to give some predictions for tonight's game as well. And then
NFL playoffs. That's going to be a good one right there. Alright, so let me share my screen with you. And then we can get looking at the AP poll and then all that other stuff. So first, let's talk about the game. Georgia versus TCU. I'm sure most of you guys watched it. It wasn't exciting at all. So you want to start with your thoughts?
yeah, sure. So just a total beat down on TCU from Georgia. The spread was 13.5. I think a lot of people had some question marks coming in, but Georgia definitely did more than cover that. They hit the over on points just by themselves. TCU, I think they had one drive throughout the entire game where they looked decent, which was when they blew the coverage, which left that passing play wide open. The ball was even underthrown. TCU really just couldn't get anything going on offense. Definitely their worst game of the year. Max Duggan looked awful. Georgia, great last game for Stetson Bennett in that offense. Their defense, I think this is probably, for me, the worst national championship game I've ever seen.
Yeah, I could agree with you on that one. It was all out boring after the first quarter. I mean, Georgia led 17-7 after the first quarter. People were like, okay, TCU scored after they fumbled. 3 and out, fumble, Georgia goes up 10-0, and then TCU comes back and scores, and we're like, all right, we got a game. Then Georgia goes down literally in like the next 2 minutes, scores another touchdown. It's like, okay, will TCU respond? TCU doesn't respond, Georgia scores again, and now it's just over at that point. That was in my opinion. Once Georgia got up 24-7, I think the game was over at that point in the second quarter.
Yeah, I agree. Once the second quarter hit, it looked like, man, can TCU do something? Can they make a push, try to make a comeback here? And it just got worse and worse. It hurt them. I don't think they would have won the game regardless, but I think Kendre Miller being out, that kind of hurt, missing like their star running back. That might have helped them out a little bit, but just Georgia showed that, they deserve to win this game. Back to back. They're the first team to do it since Alabama did it in 2011 and 2012.
Yep.
Another thing I want to talk about is, you see all over Twitter and social media right now, a lot of people are talking about the SEC. They're saying that is like the best conference. Whereas I guess I'll just get my SEC's kind of top heavy. Because, I think, yes, those Georgia, Alabama teams, they dominate, and then LSU will have a great year. But really, and then I guess Tennessee's coming along this year, but really it's just been like 2 or 3 teams in there, two teams consistently that have been winning. If you look at the bottom half of the SEC, it's kind of bad. Like Vanderbilt, Missouri, South Carolina, Florida's been
well this year, actually. I would say that.
So, yeah, South Carolina did have a better year, but, before now, there's all right. The Georgia's division of the SEC has been very easy for them. So it's not like the SEC. It's not like it just means more. It's like, yeah, it means more for Bama and Georgia as they're just dominating in there.
The only tough game I would say Georgia had this year was, I would say, Tennessee. But they had them in Georgia, and they kind of controlled that whole game. Didn't really even let Tennessee's offense roll like we thought they would that game. So Georgia just shows Georgia is the all-out dominant team in college football right now.
Yeah, I think a big question that people are definitely talking about right now. It's on ESPN. I saw this morning is they're already trying to talk about is Georgia, are they the new Bama now? They went back to back. Are they going to be like this huge dynasty that Bama's been? Are they taking over?
I don't know. We'll have to see. It would have been exciting to see Bama and Georgia in the SEC championship, like we've seen the last few years. I think the LSU team snuck in there, shouldn't have been there. I mean, Alabama didn't play well against them, but so LSU deserved to be there. But I really would have wished it would have been Alabama versus Georgia in the SEC championship this year, because I do think Alabama is a better team than LSU, and who knows, they could have been better than Georgia this year. We just don't know because they didn't play well a couple games.
Yeah, so I guess my thing with that is for Alabama is you can't have two losses and get in.
Yep.
It's easy now to make the argument after seeing TCU got whooped. They can be like, oh, man, we could have competed better against Georgia. But at the same time, TCU did have the better season than them, and they beat the Big Ten champion in Michigan. So TCU belonged in that game. They just were not able – they were not on the same level as Georgia was in terms of talent, maybe even coaching. Like them in every way.
Yeah. All right, let's look at these stats real quick. You see Stetson Bennett, 304 yards, 4 touchdowns, 18 for 25. Like, 18 passes, 304 yards. Like, that's just crazy to me. He threw over 300 yards in less than 20 passes.
Yeah, I mean, the TCU defense could not do anything. We even saw him run the ball. There were 2 rushing touchdowns for him where he went untouched into the end zone.
Yep.
Georgia, it's almost like they were doing whatever. TCU cannot stop them at all. It was a field day for Georgia. Just you could not have asked for a better performance from Georgia's offense in this game.
Yeah, and then I really think Brock Bowers really stepped up to the position this game too. 152 yards, 7 receptions. I mean, averaging 20 yards a reception.
Yeah, they said he had a quiet game against Ohio State. He did make some catches, but overall his impact in there was kind of limited. So before the game, they're talking about, can Brock Bowers get it going? Are we going to see him more in this game? And he definitely heard that noise, and he showed up. 7 catches, 150 yards. I mean, that's incredible. A great player, and he has a bright future in the NFL as well. So.
And then, I mean, nothing really here, but we can look at TCU stats. I mean, 14 for 22, 150 yards from Max Duggan, 2 interceptions. Like, that's just going to get you nowhere.
Yeah, that was his worst game of the season, definitely. He needed to show up big this game. Everyone on TCU's offense did, and we just didn't see that. I think the only player that had a decent game was probably Darius Davis. I think he had like 100 yards. But other than that, TCU's offense looks very flat.
You have Darius Davis right here, 5 catches for 100 yards, 20 yards a catch. I mean, that's a really good performance, but I mean, it all comes down to that one play, really, in my opinion. And then just a couple throws down the middle. I don't know. Nothing really going on here. Then look at this, dude. Max Duggan, 10 rushes for negative 38 yards.
Yeah, that Georgia D-line showed up. They got a lot of simulated pressure against Ohio State, whereas in this game, they kind of just were getting to the quarterback like almost immediately. Like, it was crazy. Max Duggan took a lot of sacks, a lot of hits in the backfield. Georgia's D-line did a great job in this game.
Yeah. All right. So now we're gonna shift to the college basketball AP poll, and we'll get looking at that. So we got top 25 here. All right. We can start with the top 3. What are your thoughts on this top 3? You like it? You don't like it?
Yeah, so I think for the top 3 there, I think the margins between these teams are very small. I think you can make, out of Houston, KU, and Purdue, you could make an argument to have them in any order. Houston, I do like them at number 1 right now. I think they're a very good team. Purdue's coming off a loss, so I do agree with KU moving up there. But I agree with this poll. I like all those teams there.
Yeah, I like these top 3. I mean, Houston, they've just been really dominant. They have a really good roster this year. The favorites to win the national championship this year, in my opinion. And then you have Kansas, which they were good last year, national champions last year, just as good this year, maybe even better. Who knows? And then you have Purdue just coming off a loss, but they're still a really good team. Zach Edey, and he's really had a year this year. So I really like this top three, though.
Yeah, and KU, they lost a lot of guys. I think a lot of people thought they'd be worse this year, but Grady Dick's done a great job, and then Jalen Wilson's production's gone up a lot as well. So KU looks like a good team. Like, it looks like they could make another run.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about this 4 through 10.
All right. I really like UConn. I think that they're better than number 6. I think that UConn is one of the most complete basketball teams in the nation as far as shooting, the big men they got. They can play defense. I think they're going to dominate that Big East Conference. I really like them. I think they're a complete team. I think they should be higher than number 6, but they'll just have to keep winning and they'll get moved up.
Yeah, I agree with you that UConn looks very strong this year. I mean, they started out very well. Just some bad losses there, so not really great for UConn. They sometimes don't go out and play their hardest and play up to their potential, but I don't think we need to worry about that once it comes to Big East tournament time and like March Madness time. I think UConn can make a deep run. And then also looking at Alabama at number 4, I like that. I mean, yeah, they have 2 losses, but they're the only team to beat Houston this year, so I do like them at the number 4 spot. And then Tennessee, a strong team. They've also beat KU this year, another top 2 team. And then UCLA. What are your thoughts on UCLA? I mean, I like them, you know?
Yeah, I mean, this is an experienced team. This is a team that was one half court shot away from playing in that national championship game a couple years ago. I mean, they made the Final Four. Most of their team is still there. I watched the USC game, and, it's a rivalry. That game's always going to be good, and they looked good. Their offense was solid in that game. I think that Pac-12 is going to be interesting. Arizona right in there at number 9. I think they can compete with UCLA as well. So I really think that, that Pac-12 tournament I think that's going to be up for grabs. It's going to be interesting to see some of these matchups.
Yeah, and also you could say UCLA came off a 2-point win against USC, and it's a rivalry game. It's always going to be a tough game, and USC is not a bad team.
No, they're solid. I guess another question I would have is Gonzaga at number 8. They took more losses in their non-con than they usually do, and now they're kind of like floating by in their trash conference, not really playing any good opponents. Are they a little high there at number 8?
Yeah, I think so, but I mean, they were already ranked. Even with 3 losses, they were still in the top 15, and now teams have lost the last couple of weeks, so they jump back into the top 8. I mean, they're going to probably win out their conference, kind of sucks because they don't play in a great conference, but I don't know. I just don't really like this Gonzaga team this year. I know Drew Timme has a way more on his shoulder than he usually does the last 2 years. He's got not really solid all-around players with him this year, in my opinion. They're still a really good basketball team. They could make a deep run in the tournament, but I just don't like them compared to previous years.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't see them making another tournament run. The problem with Gonzaga is you go 3 months without playing anyone. It's hard to win in March. They'll get a good seed and they'll make a run. But I don't see them. I see them as like a team that's going to lose in the Sweet 16 this year. I don't think they go very far.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, and then I want to before we shift focus to the next teams, I want to talk about this. K-State and Texas, 10 and 11. People have argued K-State should be above Texas, and then Texas should be below them since they just went into Austin and dropped 116. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's kind of fun. Since we just beat them, I do think it should be switched. I think we should be 10 and they should be 11. They have one more loss than us, and yeah, we just beat them. K-State is a good program. I agree with that. I think that they should be I think they should be ranked as high as they are. 3 straight top 25 wins, some of which were on the road.
Yeah.
I do think you got to flip the teams there. And another thing to mention with Texas is, they got their assistant coach in there. I do think that they don't look as good as they did. They've been giving up a lot of points. I mean, giving up 116 points at home. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I do think K-State should be above Texas here, number 10. Now, if Texas was, like, say they dropped them to 8 and K-State was 11, now I wouldn't be complaining. But you have two teams. One team just beat this team badly, and they're right next to each other. Just flip them. Like, why can't we just flip them one spot? Like, I don't know why.
Yeah.
We can dive into K-State more here as we look at the 11 through 17 teams. But I do want to talk about K-State not even being ranked last week and coming into this week now having 3 top 25 wins in a row. What are your thoughts on them?
I think Jerome Tang is in the running for Coach of the Year. This was a team that finished last in the Big 12 last year, and they had 3 straight losing seasons. I mean, we looked awful. Fired Bruce Weber. Just the program was in a downward spiral, and this was a hard job to come into and turn it around as well as he has at 14-1, number 11 in the nation. Now there is a lot of time left in the season, obviously, but man, Jerome Tang has done a great job. The fact that K-State is even mentioned in this poll, the fact that they can come in and compete in year one. I think what's kind of scary for K-State is Jerome Tang's doing such a good job that his name's going to be in the running for other programs during the offseason. I mean, that's just how incredible it's been his first year.
Yeah, I agree with you there. K-State just had an incredible season. You know, Jerome Tang, what he's done with this program, turning it upside down all over in one season. I mean, it's just amazing. Yeah, there's still time left. I mean, we got a whole another half of season to go. But, I mean, Jerome Tang coming in with 2 returners from last year. So he had a whole new recruiting class. He had to recruit. He had to get people to transfer. And he's just done an amazing job. 14-1 is very impressive. You know, 3 top 25 wins, the last 3 wins. They got OSU tonight, and then you got Iowa State and KU. So that's 2 more back-to-back top 25 games right there.
Yeah, you know, another thing to mention, I think, here is Iowa State took a big jump, but I think they should be ranked even higher than they are. The Big 12, top to bottom, is the best conference in basketball this year. I think that they're a great team. TCU, that second half, they really took over. TCU made a late run to tie it, and then Iowa State, they showed poise, and they hit that game-winning shot. That was a great game to watch. Just shows how strong the Big 12 is. Another top 25 matchup in there to watch. And the thing to know about Iowa State is they're one of the oldest teams in college basketball. So they've got a lot of experience. They've got talent. They're one of those teams that can definitely make a tournament run this year.
Yeah, Iowa State also on the bottom half of that Big 12 last year, and now they're looking to run for a Big 12 title with K-State and KU. And then also, let's talk about Xavier from the Big East. They could give UConn a little run in there, but I just think UConn's too strong in the Big East.
Yeah, I see UConn winning that conference. I think Xavier looks good now, but I think that UConn is too talented, and they'd outmatch the rest of the conference. I see them winning it regardless.
Let's also look at this ACC as well. You got Virginia at 13 and then Miami at 16. But Miami just coming off a loss to Georgia Tech. I mean, not a great loss for them. And then Virginia also dropping 2 spots in the poll as well. I mean, it's not a good look for this ACC this year, in my opinion, where coming into the season looked like could be up for the running as best conference in basketball, up with the Big 12 and Big 10.
Yeah, you know, I think the Big 12's taken over ahead of the ACC. I think the ACC isn't great this year. I think that 16 spot for Miami is very generous. I think you could easily make an argument for TCU to be ahead of them. And Virginia, I think, is lucky to only move down 2 spots as well.
Yeah. Also want to talk about Arkansas at 15. I mean, they did beat in my opinion, they did beat an overrated Missouri team. And they just got smacked by Auburn, who Auburn has not looked, in my opinion, great this year. I know they're ranked in the top 25, but still, I do not think Auburn has looked as good as they did last year.
Yeah, you know, I agree with that. I think that Arkansas is a good basketball team. I think they'll get it together. They've got some good players. That WSU transferred in there, and he's been going off with them.
Yeah.
And then I like their big man as well. I mean, they've got a solid team. Um, I will agree. I think that 15 right now, they probably should have moved down a little bit lower in 2 spots. But I think in the long term, they definitely are one of the top 15 teams in the nation. I do like that basketball team.
Yeah, I agree with you. Arkansas is a very good team. It's just they didn't have an amazing week, in my opinion. So, I mean, they should maybe be dropped a couple more spots, but I do think by the end of the season they'll be a top 15 for sure team. And then before we leave this 11 through 17 area, let's talk about TCU. I know they just lost to Iowa State, but they also come in to Baylor and beat Baylor by 1 point, which Baylor's a very good team. I know they're not ranked anymore. I mean, when you lose back-to-back games against they lost back-to-back games against very solid teams, but still, when you lose back-to-back games and you're on the border of the top 25, they're just going to drop you out, in my opinion.
That just shows how solid the Big 12 is, that you can have like a 3 or 4 game stretch where you're playing all ranked teams. And, these games are very evenly matched. When you got 2 good teams going up against each other, it's going to be close. Not a bad loss at all for TCU, and that's a great win for them against Baylor. I watched both games, and they look solid. It's just the Big 12 is so competitive that teams are going to beat up on each other, and you're going to have some losses.
Yeah, anyone could win any day. I mean, you could have the worst team at OSU going into KU, and OSU almost beat KU in Allen Fieldhouse. I mean, they had the lead almost the entire game, and then KU just pulled away last minute. It just shows you that anyone could win in the Big 12.
And the bottom half of the Big 12 is good. I looked at Joe Lenardi's bracket, kind of the 10 Big 12 teams to get in. And that 10th team, I think, was Texas Tech, and they were in the first 4 out. So, that's just incredible to show that this is a conference where if you took the bottom half and put them into a different conference, I think every one of those teams that could make the tournament. So the Big 12 is just going to beat up on each other, and it's going to be competitive. And I think that's going to be fun for us to watch great basketball this year.
It's just really crazy for every team in one conference to, at the halfway point, still have a chance of making the March Madness tournament. We just don't see that usually in college basketball.
Yeah, it's crazy. Let's take a look at the
18 through 24 teams. Thoughts on Wisconsin and then on them after dropping to a not very good Illinois team this year, in my opinion. Illinois is not as good as they have been in the last few years.
Yeah, sure. I'll weigh in on that. So I think Wisconsin should have dropped a little bit lower. I think they still should be in the top 25. But, Illinois, Illinois was looking good. They had a run where I think they tied for winning the Big Ten with Kofi Cockburn and those guys. This is a down year for Illinois. This is a rough year. I still think they'll get in March Madness. Maybe it's like a 10 through 12 seed, they'll sneak in there. But this is a rough year, so that's not a great loss for Wisconsin.
Yeah. Also, Providence. We saw them last year. They were a pretty solid team. Won a couple games in the tournament. Didn't go as far as people thought they would as a 4 seed, but Providence is still a very solid team. But like I said, UConn is just too strong in that Big East, and then even Xavier. I think Xavier is too strong for Providence as well. So they'll probably finish the top 3 in the Big East, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's tough to tell how good they. The Big East isn't as deep as it can be. They are right now. They are that third or fourth team in there. I guess a huge thing that I want to weigh in on is Missouri at 20. That is a team that is overrated. All capitalized letters, overrated. If you look at them, man, they play some bad opponents they played have been close games. I watched the Vanderbilt game. That was awful. Missouri was a goal. If they called a goaltending on them, and then the fouls were a little bit closer, they had 20 called on Vanderbilt and 5 on Missouri. That game could go either way. They were battling with exactly a team you want to have a close game with. And then their two biggest wins, Kentucky and Illinois. Those are teams that are both having down years. Kentucky's doing so bad that it's rumored that John Calipari is possibly leaving to Texas. That's how down they are this year. So, Missouri's gotten away with playing some bad teams. They will later down the line. They're going to get exposed. They do not belong in the top 25.
I do agree, and I also believe Missouri is not a very well second half team as well. They come out strong in the first half, they look good, and then the second half, man, they get beat, especially against Vanderbilt. They came out the first half, it was looking like, all right, this is going to be a good game, but Missouri's probably going to keep it at a decent amount of lead. But no, Vanderbilt came back, they took the lead in the second half a little bit. It was a really interesting game to watch, Vanderbilt gave Missouri their run for the money, but Missouri came out on top. I think Missouri came out on top just because I think Vanderbilt is not a good program this year. They haven't been a good program in years.
Yeah, Missouri, they've got some guys that can score. They can shoot the ball. They'll have runs where they'll shoot the ball really good. But I mean, that defense is bad. 80 points put up on you by Vanderbilt, and there's been other bad teams that have put up 80 and 90 points on them. I mean, Wichita State is an example. They put up a lot of points on them, went to overtime and almost won. So, Missouri, the record is good, but that record is deceiving.
Yeah. Let's also talk about Auburn. They lost at the beginning of the week, but then they rise one spot as they beat Arkansas's commanding win. I mean, it was just easy. Like, they led the entire time by over 10 points. Solid win for them. Not as strong as last year after Jabari Smith leaving, but still they're a very dangerous team at some times, but they're going to lose games this year.
Yeah, I think you should flip them. I think they should move up a couple spots. That's a good win for them. A huge question mark for me is 22. Charleston, yeah. What are we doing? Are we serious? They play in a conference of absolutely nobodies. I looked at their schedule. They've not beat a single decent opponent. It's just kind of funny. I guess that's kind of what can go wrong with the AP poll is when you have a bunch of sports writers that just like a cool, funny story. Let's throw Charleston here at 22. They only have one loss. Well, they haven't played anyone. So I do think there's more deserving teams that belong in this AP poll ahead of them.
Yeah, people could agree with you on that. I mean, they do have the longest winning streak in college basketball right now, but yeah, they don't play anyone. They haven't played anyone good this year. They certainly have one loss, and I don't even know that one loss is probably to a bad team. I mean, I haven't really followed Charleston.
It was, yeah. I mean, they do not have a single win that you would consider good. Not impressive at all.
And then also San Diego State, 12-3 in the Mountain West, also up here. Very interesting to see them, as the Mountain West is not a good conference either.
Generous. I can't weigh in on it too much. I haven't gotten the chance to watch San Diego State play a whole lot. It'll be interesting to see what they do moving forward, but
I think it's always interesting. We see San Diego State always in the top 25 usually, I feel, a lot lately in the last couple years. And then they go to the tournament and they just don't perform.
Yeah, they've had some solid teams. Like Kawhi Leonard even went there. They have some history. Yeah. I think they're definitely a team that's going to get in there in March Madness, and they'll be like a 6 through 10 seed and they'll compete. I think that the Mountain West, it kind of hurts them though. They'll get a couple more losses in there, and it'll be hard to make the argument why they should be ranked because there's not a whole lot of competition in there. And another thing I see it, Duke dropped 8 spots coming off their loss. What do you think about that? Should they have dropped further? Did they drop too much? What do you think?
I mean, I can't really. I would like to see Duke drop out of the top 25 after they last week, but looking at the teams and then the teams below them, I do agree 8 spots is a lot of spots. I mean, they only lost one game this week, but they still lost a bad game and then barely beat Boston College by 1 point. I could see them being out of the top 25 though here soon.
Yeah, for Duke, I mean, this was, I don't want to say expected, but when you lose Coach K, man, it's kind of hard the next year, I guess, to put a run together. But, I do think they have time to get it together. The ACC is a little bit weaker this year, so I do think that they can string some wins together, and they'll be fine. I definitely think I'll see them getting like a 5 or 6 seed in this tournament, maybe even a 4 seed. Um, just some question marks right now. Even their win against Boston College, I mean, not impressive at all. So this team, it would be nice to see them get it together and have more dominance in that ACC conference.
Yeah, them in North Carolina, just not strong this year like we usually see both those teams.
Should we look at that number 25 and then maybe talk about some of the teams that are left out of the AP poll?
Yeah, so we got Marquette at 25, and then we got close runners for the top 25. We got Baylor 93 votes, and then Clemson 43, and then really interesting Florida Atlantic getting bids for the top 25. Like that's also another team that's very interesting. Haven't looked much at them, so I can't say anything, but just you never hear about. I've never even heard really anything about Florida Atlantic before in the past.
Yeah, so that is kind of funny to see them in there. 33 votes too. That's not bad. I guess my thing is, so I think Baylor is being punished for playing in the Big 12. Yeah, they are on a losing streak, but you can't tell me that team does not belong in the top 25. They are a good team. George is a great scorer. He's going to get drafted in the NBA this year. They're well coached with Scott Drew. Baylor belongs in that top 25. And then for me, Indiana, although they did lose to Iowa, I think that they are a top 25 team as well. I think they'll get some wins together and they'll get back in it. But, definitely some question marks through this 20 through 25 and then some teams that are not ranked.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Baylor, I would like to see him still in the top 25, maybe at like 24 or 25. Marquette, they're a good team, but they have 4 losses and they really haven't had any impressive wins in my opinion this year.
Yeah, the Big East is weaker. Them and Providence, I think it'll be interesting to see if they're frauds or if they do belong in there in that top 25. It'll be interesting to see some of those matchups. But as of right now, I think I have to say Marquette should not be in there.
All right, so now as we talked about the top 25, we're going to give there's a good slate of basketball games tonight. So we got the top 25 games tonight. Some good ones here, like Michigan State. They're not a bad team. They've had some bad losses, but they've also had some good wins, and they've been into the wire with some good teams. So it's in Wisconsin, though. I do think Wisconsin's going to pull out here with a win, but it's going to be a close one, very close.
Yeah, I think that is going to be another close game. Michigan State's not ranked, but if they win this game this week, I think they'll have the argument next week to get ranked. I think this is going to be a very close game. I'm going to have to give the edge to Wisconsin. They're playing at home.
Yep.
I think they find a way to get it done.
K-State versus Oklahoma State. Now Oklahoma State 9-6, and you have K-State 14-1. People would say, "Oh, K-State easily," but no, not in my opinion. I think K-State comes out with this one, but it's the Big 12. Every game's going to be a grind.
This is another example. Oklahoma State is a team that, people that don't know Big 12 basketball, they're going to look at it and they say, "Oh, K-State should kill them." But Oklahoma State just lost by 2 to KU. They're a team that can compete. They're a great team in that Big 12 conference. The Big 12 is deep. So I think this first half between Kansas State and Oklahoma State, I think the first half is going to be close. I think it's going to be high scoring again, as we see in a lot of these K-State games recently. K-State, the last 10 minutes will run away with it, though. So I do think K-State will win by 8 to 12 points.
All right. Texas Tech, Iowa State. Texas Tech is also another good team. This is a Big 12 matchup for you. So, these are all going to be a grind. I do think Iowa State will come out with the win as they are home. I don't see Texas Tech winning this game as Iowa State is a very strong team.
Yeah, I think that this is a great matchup. I think Texas Tech needs a win. Seeing them against KU, they almost came out with one there. Iowa State's coming off a tough game against TCU. I think they're a great team, but this just shows how the Big 12, how strong they are.
Yeah.
I think they need the win, and they come in, play strong, and get the upset.
Oh, okay. Auburn versus Ole Miss. I don't see Auburn losing this game, even though it's in their way. I just can't see them losing this game.
Yeah, that just shows the bottom half of the SEC how weak it is. Auburn, there's no reason why they shouldn't win this game by at least 15 points.
Yeah. All right. Now let's go to UNC versus Virginia. UNC is very, very up and down this year. Like, they play well sometimes and they don't play good. But, I mean, Baycott needs help, in my opinion. They're not going to win any games if Armani Baycott has no help. I mean, he's averaging like 20-something points a game, over 10 rebounds a game. Like, he's averaging a double-double in college basketball. Like, and then they're losing games. Like, what are we doing here, North Carolina?
Yeah, they were ranked number 1 to start the year. Definitely not a great year for them. However, I think they still have some talent. I do think that they need to start winning games. Even last year, we saw, man, no one was talking about them. They made it all the way to the national championship and lost in overtime. I think UNC does come in and they play good. I think they get the upset over Virginia.
Upset, yeah. I mean, I think Virginia's going to pull out with a win this one. I mean, UNC hasn't been able to finish games strong this year at all. But, I mean, it's going to be another close one. UNC is a very talented team. And, if Baycott's going to get going, we already know Baycott's going to play well. But, if they can get their guards going, UNC could start winning games. They just need to get Caleb Love and some other guys to get going, though.
Yeah. And then looking at this next matchup between Vanderbilt and Tennessee, Vanderbilt, just another example of how weak the bottom half of the SEC is. No reason why Tennessee shouldn't win this game by 20 points.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's going to be a blowout. And then we got our last two 12-25 matchups of the day. KU, Oklahoma. Thoughts on that one?
Yeah, they're playing in Allen Fieldhouse. Oklahoma's another team that's madness. I think the first half might be close, but I think the KU will win this game by like 10 points at home.
Yeah, I think so too. KU's going to pull away with this in Allen Fieldhouse. I mean, no one really beats them in Allen Fieldhouse anyway, even if it's a good team. We have San Diego State versus Nevada here. I do think San Diego State is the better team, but Nevada's had good teams recently. So Nevada could make a run and give San Diego State a tough game tonight.
Yeah, it's at home for San Diego State though, so I'm going to give the win to them. I think it'll be a close game, but I'm going to go with the Aztecs here.
All right, so that is our college basketball.
All right, so switching over to the NFL side of things, we got some breaking news. Just paid Roquan Smith a 5-year, $100 million deal, making him the highest paid linebacker in NFL history. That's huge. I mean, this really shakes things up as the Lamar Jackson contract situation is not resolved, and this makes it even harder to pay him the money he wants. I think it's more and more likely that we'll see Lamar on a different team next year or the year after that. He wants to get paid, and as of right now, it doesn't look like the Ravens are willing to do that.
Yeah. Texans head coach Lovie Smith fired a couple days ago. I mean, who saw this coming? Who didn't see this coming?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a temporary hire. He's not. He had some years back with the Bears that they were all right. They had a great defense, but he really hasn't done much. I think that was just a short-term hire. They got a high draft pick. They could have had number 1, but they won their last game against the Colts, which I don't think they were trying to do that. But
and also with the Texans organization, I mean, that organization is so bad. Like, any guy that comes in there is going to look terrible the first year or two. I mean, in my opinion, Lovie Smith is not a great coach, but if they hire someone next, they got to give someone a chance to last more than 1 year. They can't just be 1 year and then be a bad team and then you're fired. It's not just the coaching.
Yeah, I agree with that. They've been a horrible organization in making decisions. I think the Bill O'Brien trade with DeAndre Hopkins, being given up for an old running back and not great draft picks. I think that was the one that everyone really knows that, that just kind of started things going downhill for them with losing seasons. not much they could control with, how the Deshaun Watson situation went, obviously. And also another thing, I guess, switching over to the Patriots, Matt Patricia was fired as offensive coordinator. I think that's good news for them. This gives Mac Jones more of a chance to be successful, but still a huge question mark from him is whether he's the right guy for them at quarterback.
Yeah, that is true. Is he the right guy, or is he going to need a couple more years, or was it just he had no scheme offensively? We'll have to see that next year. I mean, if they have a good offensive coordinator next year, and then if they have a good scheme and they're still not winning games, then I think Mac Jones is not the guy after that.
Yeah, Bill Belichick's been struggling a lot since Brady left. That's a big question mark. Like, what are you doing? You hire a defensive-minded guy, to run your offense. As we've seen, they would do even on, third downs. They really couldn't open up their offense. I don't know how much of it is, can Mac Jones make some of those throws down the field? Like, is he that great of a but I feel like you got to at least open it up and give your offense a chance to be successful. Because we saw flashes of great play from their defense with Judon and some of those guys getting in there making plays. So I do think this team could have made the playoffs if their offense was better, for sure.
I do think the Patriots could have made the playoffs this year, in my opinion. I mean, you have that one game they lose to the Raiders. Like, what are we doing there? Like, what are we doing? Shovel passing all the way back to Mac Jones. He's the only guy back there, and you don't even make it to him, and then they lose on the last play of the game. Just run it to overtime.
Another example of questionable coaching recently from the Patriots. You can't blame it on one of those players when you're doing something dumb like that. You just need to kneel and take it to overtime. Very rarely is tossing the ball backwards 5 times going to work. So it's my opinion, the risk outweighs the reward there, and that's just a bad loss for the Patriots, as the Raiders are having an even worse year. They benched Derek Carr. So it's like everything's going wrong with the Raiders. They have a lot of talent on offense. They should have had a winning season. I think the huge thing for NFL, we'll talk about the offseason a little bit before we make our playoff predictions, but I think it's going to be interesting with, Rodgers, Brady, Lamar. It's going to be interesting to see how the quarterbacks get shaken up, because there's some teams like the quarterback. Their defense is really good. They'd be a threat with a QB and, if their offense gets going. The Dolphins, Tua, is he good? Like 3 concussions, all the problems he's had. Is he going to be good?
The Raiders are going to need a quarterback with Devontae Adams. He said he's staying in Vegas, so the Raiders are going to need a quarterback. It's just going to be a very interesting offseason for quarterbacks this year.
Yeah, maybe even the 49ers. Brock Purdy's looked great, but, say the playoffs, now the playoffs are here. Say he has a bad game and, they want someone that can win for them in the playoffs, like they're in now mode, right? So, maybe they try and have, a short-term window with a guy like Brady or Rodgers and just go for Super Bowls, and let either Trey Lance or one of those guys just sit and watch.
Yeah, so also, speaking of quarterbacks, we're going to see, in my opinion, a lot of quarterbacks on different teams this year, and then we're also going to see a lot of new quarterbacks, and there's going to be quarterbacks we had this year playing that aren't going to be playing this next year. There's a lot of draft stock in this quarterback college draft class this year. Yeah,
C.J. Stroud looked incredible against Georgia. He played a phenomenal game. It came down to their kicker. That was a long field goal to make. It was way off. He only had 5 or 6 incompletions that game. He looked great. Marvin Harrison, when he went down, I think that kind of affected them a little bit, to where they had to settle for a field goal instead of a touchdown later in that game. But he looks like a great quarterback. But the problem for him is a lot of Ohio State quarterbacks don't pan out in the draft. But after watching him play, he definitely looks like a guy to me that can throw the ball and run an offense good and has a lot of potential.
Yeah, also Hendon Hooker and obviously the favorite to go number 1 overall, Bryce Young. So just very strong quarterback.
Yeah.
There's other quarterbacks. You have Richardson from Florida. He's a very solid quarterback.
I'm going to have to disagree there. I think he's tall and fast. But, watching him play a lot of those Florida games, man, he had a lot of picks and he did not look great at all. I think he's hyped up just off his physical tool set. He's big and he can run fast. But, if you watch him play, a lot of bad decisions, not great at throwing the ball. I definitely think that there's 2 quarterbacks way above the rest of the draft class and that's C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young. An issue Bryce Young is going to face is his size. He's got a lot of tools. He's a very smart player. He can make plays, but we've kind of seen with Tua some of the time these smaller quarterbacks, a lot of injuries, and they can't make a career out of it.
Yeah, I just think it's going to be very interesting for Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud. I mean, Bryce Young probably going to get drafted #1 overall. He's going to go to that really just messed up Texans organization. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how he does there.
At the Bears, they have the #1 pick.
Or, yeah, not the Bears. I meant the Texans because I don't see the Bears drafting a quarterback this year, in my opinion.
Yeah, which is kind of weird to me. If you look at Justin Fields, let's he's a great runner, right? He can make plays with his legs. But the way you have a long career in the NFL is your ability to throw the ball. If we look at two big passing stats for him, his completion percentage is the worst in the league. Out of all starting quarterbacks, he has the lowest completion percentage in the league from starting quarterbacks. His passing yards, this is actually a crazy stat that not a lot of people are talking about. He has the fewest passing yards ever for a starting quarterback in the NFL. I mean, that is terrible. Like, Justin Fields has not shown any ability to throw the ball this year. Like, they lose a lot of games, so he's able to get rushing yards. I think defenses are eventually going to key in on him. He's not going to get as many rushing yards, and he can't really throw the ball. So, I mean, they won 3 games this year. I think the Bears need to find a solid quarterback going forward. If they don't draft it at #1, maybe draft a good defensive player and look for one later in the draft. But I do not think that Justin Fields is the guy.
Yeah, I can agree with you there. I mean, sorry, I got mixed up. We talked about Bryce Young going #1 overall all season, and then the Texans all of a sudden just decide to win 2 games in the last 3 weeks of the season, so they moved down to #2. So it's just interesting. But I do think the Texans are probably going to pick Bryce Young, and then I just can't see Chicago. Looking at where their status is right now, I just think they're going to give Justin Fields one more year to try it out. I mean, but if they're gonna try and let Justin Fields be the quarterback for at least one more year, they're gonna at least need also to give him a little help as well. I mean, yeah, he's below average in throwing and everything. I mean, he's literally like one of the worst in throwing stats for a quarterback, but also he needs a little help on offense there as well.
Yeah, they didn't have great weapons at wide receiver. They tried to get him some help with Chase Claypool. Claypool just about looked like a potato out there. Justin Fields didn't use him at all. They gave up their 32nd pick in the draft for a receiver to try and help him out, and we didn't really see him utilized at all. So I think the huge question is, like, can Justin Fields throw the ball? Like, as an NFL quarterback, can he pass it? Guys like Lamar, like, he can make a career from being mobile. Lamar's a great runner, but he can also throw the ball. His MVP season, he led the league in throwing touchdowns. So that's just something we haven't seen from Justin Fields. I mean, that few of passing yards, that many interceptions he's had. He's done a great job running the ball, but that has not won them any games as they're picking #1 overall.
Lamar also, he came in as a big-time running quarterback, but every year I feel like he gets better at his passing. His throws look a lot better every year. He's gotten better. I mean, just the only problem is lately they haven't had any big wide receivers at the Ravens either for Lamar to really throw to. I mean, you have like just average wide receivers, but you have Mark Andrews here, one of the best tight ends in the league. I mean, that helps as well.
Yeah.
They don't really have great receivers, in my opinion, for the Ravens to make a really good run to be a really great team.
Yeah, Mark Andrews is a good tight end. I thought it was ridiculous how people were comparing him to Travis Kelce at the beginning of the year, because Kelsey's the best tight end, hands down. But I think the Ravens, I really do think it's going to be interesting going forward, because they're giving a linebacker $100 million. I mean, I think Lamar has made it as clear as possible. He's played good. He's won an MVP, won a championship. But he's done his job. He's played good. They haven't built around him as well as they can. I think Lamar might be like, I think this is kind of like the Tyreek Hill situation. It might be like, all right, guys, I think this is our time. Our time's up here. Unless you guys are going to pay me the money I think I deserve. Otherwise, I will go to a team that will pay me. Because I do think someone like the Jets or the Dolphins, maybe, I do think there is a team that will give him a max contract because they're just fed up of how bad their offense is.
All right, now let's get into our wild card predictions here. We'll start off with the Seahawks 49ers. I mean, I don't see Seahawks winning this game at all. I mean, I don't think anyone has Seattle winning this game. I mean, the 49ers is too strong. Their defense, Brock Purdy has ran that offense really well. The Seahawks are. I don't even think the Seahawks should be here, in my opinion, but they got lucky.
Yeah, it kind of sucks. Just another Packers team that let down Aaron Rodgers. So we see the Seahawks in this game. I do think that the 49ers will win. I think they'll cover the spread. The Seahawks, they've had a great year. Broncos country, let's ride. Your starting quarterback, you get a bunch of first round draft picks, and so you even got Noah Fant, who's done a good job, and Geno Smith becomes the guy, and Russell Wilson goes to Denver. That was the biggest move of the offseason, and Russell Wilson's been awful, and Geno Smith has been balling out. I mean, he's set their season record for passing yards. I mean, Geno Smith has had a great year.
Yeah, Geno Smith has had a great year, and that team's just very young. I mean, they'll be good down the road. I mean, they got a lot of young guys, Kenneth Walker first year. They've got a lot of great defensive secondary guys that are in their first couple years. I mean, they're going to be good once they get more experience, in my opinion, but just not right now, though. The Seahawks are just not on the level of the 49ers at the moment right here. But, yeah, with that upcoming draft stock, they got a lot of first rounds in the next few years. I mean, they're going to be a good team in a couple years, though.
Chargers, Jaguars. That's probably going to be the closest game on the AFC side of things. That's a 4-5 matchup. I think a lot of people could see going either way. The Chargers will have flashes of greatness, but then they'll have games last week where the Broncos will get out and they're ahead of them, even though the Chargers are still playing their starters with Herbert and everything. This game's at Jacksonville. Raina, give us your thoughts.
I will say I do think the Chargers are going to pull away with them, but it's going to be very close. It's going to be a one-score game. It could come down to 3-2 or even a one-point game. Come down to the last drive. Who gets the ball to start? Who gets the ball last drive? Could come down to that. I mean, Herbert versus Trevor Lawrence. We got two great young quarterbacks. Herbert right now is, in my opinion, better than Trevor Lawrence, but Trevor Lawrence has taken a huge leap this year compared to last year. I mean, he's really improved. Took that terrible Jags team to the playoffs, especially what Doug Peterson has done as well with the Jags team. I mean, it's just very incredible to see. And then it's also interesting to see, I mean, we got Joey Bosa and Mike Williams. They're both questionable for this game as they both got hurt last game when in a meaningless game.
Yeah, we see a lot of questionable decisions from the Chargers head coach. They've got a lot of talent. They missed the playoffs last year from poor coaching as him as well. If people remember the clock situation against the Raiders in that final game that was like winning you're in, they were actually going to tie the game. But he decided not to he decided to use the timeouts when the Raiders were going to run the clock out and both teams would have made the playoffs. So, I mean, he cost them play this year, just more questionable decisions. I mean, the Chargers are a team we should see winning a lot of games. They've got a lot of talent on offense, and they've got some, defense, Derwin James. I mean, they've got some guys on defense as well.
I mean, Brandon Staley, he's just very up in the air. I mean, sometimes he coaches well and sometimes he doesn't. I mean, he makes some poor decisions sometimes and it costs them games like we saw this year. I mean, he made some poor decisions. They lost some games they shouldn't have. And last year, I mean, they could have beat the Chiefs 2 times, but, they beat the Chiefs fair and square in Arrowhead. I mean, incredible win. And then last year we see the Chiefs come into
so far.
And they go for it on 4th down 3 or 4 times and don't convert a single one. And they lose that game only by a touchdown in overtime. They could have easily won that game if they just take their points. I mean, Brandon Staley, he's not a terrible coach, but he just makes some very weird decisions, in my opinion, that just doesn't help the Chargers at times.
Yeah, instead of doing mind right, more mentally and think through some of the decisions he's going to make. However, the Jaguars coach has done a great job in his first year. Peterson, he's an amazing coach. He did a great job. Everyone knows about Boise State, won a Super Bowl with the Eagles. I mean, the Jags could not have hit, more of a home run with this hire. He's done a great job. Urban Meyer, good college coach, but, he kind of ruined things for the Jags. He comes in and, he's fighting the kicker, Peterson's turned it around in year 1. Everyone thought, the Titans, this is their division. Even though they lost their best receiver, they're still going to win it. But, this is a great year from the coach of the year race. So I feel like in normal years, Peterson or the Lions coach could even win it because I mean he had them at a winning record. That's incredible too. They
Oh,
almost
with
made the
Dan,
playoffs,
with
but I mean
I
the
mean,
Eagles have had such a dominant year that like that coach of the year race this year is crazy.
what Dan Campbell did to the Lions this year, I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, how could you not love that guy? I mean, he fights for his guys. I mean, he's always there. He's always pumped up. I mean, Dan Campbell's just a guy like I don't think anyone doesn't like.
Yeah, he's
But
done an incredible job.
Doug Peterson, going back to the Jaguars, I mean, he was a great head coach for for the Eagles, in my opinion. I mean, him getting fired at the Eagles organization, I mean, because they won a Super Bowl and then 2 years later there has a losing record. I mean that's not really on him, in my opinion. I mean, you have Carson Wentz who just had one amazing year, and then he gets injured, and then he's struggling through all these injuries, and then you have Nick Foles come in. I mean, they won the Super Bowl with Doug Peterson, but I think that Super Bowl win was on Doug Peterson because they don't have their starting quarterback anymore, so they go to their backup, and I think Doug Peterson helped them win that Super Bowl. And then, I mean, Carson Wentz is just awful ever since that Super Bowl year. So, I mean,
Yeah, that injury in 2017 really changed him. Another thing about the Eagles is like they're an organization that like the bar is always up here for them. They even parted ways with Andy Reid, who's done an incredible job with the Chiefs.
right.
And it ended up working for them. Peterson ended up getting a Super Bowl, but like I guess that's kind of the tough part of being a head coach at the Eagles is like, you have 2 or 3 seasons where you're not winning. They're like they're looking to move on. Like just
I
like
mean,
that, they're looking for the
Andy.
next guy.
I mean, Andy Reid's there for I don't know, like 10 years, and he takes them to the playoffs like 7 times.
Yeah.
And then the last 3 seasons, I mean, they didn't have any talent. They lost all their talent after
Mhm.
8 years. They lost their talent, and they have some losing records, or they don't make the playoffs, and they fire Andy Reid. But
That is kind of crazy that one of Andy Reid, an incredible coach, couldn't win a Super Bowl with the Eagles. Yeah, I guess like that's why they were impatient. They wanted to win the big game. It never happened. So, um, I guess getting back to this Chargers Jaguars game, I am going to go with the Chargers here. I think it's going to be a close matchup. I do think the Chargers just have too much talent. This is Trevor Lawrence's first playoff game. I'm going to go with the Chargers here.
yeah, and let's go down to Bills Dolphins. I mean, Bills are gonna run away with this one. I mean, it's in Buffalo. Who knows what the situation is with Tua? I mean, if Tua plays, it could be an interesting game, but I don't see Tua playing this game, and I think it's going to be Skylar Thompson running the offense, and the offense is not good with Skylar Thompson on the field. So I think the Bills blow out the Dolphins here unless Tua is playing.
Man, if you're the Dolphins, you cannot hope for worse when you start the Thompson is in at starting quarterback. Even college, I thought he was a little overrated. Isn't that great of a quarterback? Can't really throw the ball. I think that if Tua is playing, we could see another game like the last one in Buffalo, where it was kind of a high-scoring game, came down to the wire. So I'm going to go with Bills regardless, but I think if Tua is playing, it will definitely be more of a game.
Yeah. Let's shift our focus to Vikings Giants. I mean, the Vikings are a big questionable team. I mean, they're 12-4. I mean, they have a great record, but lots of bad losses and lots of very close wins. I mean, they're the only team in NFL history to have a 12-win season with a negative point differential.
Yeah, that's crazy. A lot of people are calling the Vikings frauds. I can kind of see that. That Packers game, man, that's kind of hard to grasp. They just got beat that bad. They did have a good game earlier in the year against the Bills where they did beat a strong opponent in that. But, I don't see the Vikings getting very far in the playoffs, but I just think this is new to the Giants. They've had a lot of losing seasons, and now they come back in the wild card. I just think it's too much firepower on offense for the Vikings, and they do win this game at home.
Yeah, I think the Giants are going to make this one close. I mean, we saw the Giants and Vikings play a couple weeks ago. It came down to a game-winning field goal. So it is going to be a close matchup. The Vikings will give the Giants will give the Vikings a little run for their money. But I think the Vikings will pull out this win. I mean, it's going to be close. I mean, the Vikings have been doing this all year, though. They have been winning close games. They know how to win the down to the wire games. But I will say, if I will say if the Giants get a big lead to start the first half, if they get out a big lead by halftime, I mean, I just don't see the Vikings coming back. I know we could say like, oh, the Vikings came back 33 to nothing, but that's the 4-win Colts. I mean, come on, man. And giving up 36 points to the Colts anyway is just outright terrible. I know they won that game. They came back like biggest comeback ever, but that's just terrible. And it's playoff season. I mean, these teams
Yeah.
are good, so these teams are not going to let up a big lead. So
That was game of the year, which still isn't a good thing that you're letting the Colts, you guys are battling. You have to make that huge comeback to win that game. That was a very fun game to watch. I started watching it at the start of the second half, and I was like, man, as the game kept going, it's like, man, maybe the Vikings can make a comeback here. And then everything went in motion. It was really fun to watch. Now switching things over to the AFC, Ravens and Bengals. Lamar's status, Raina, you want to give us that?
Yeah, Lamar's status. I mean, he still is questionable. We don't know if he's going to play or not, but there are reports that he is supposed to be in for this game. I mean, he has been practicing the last couple weeks. In my opinion, I think they just the last 2 weeks they already made the playoffs pretty much, so they're just like, all right, we're going to rest this guy, so he's healthy for the playoffs. This could be a very interesting game, though. I mean, back-to-back games against the Ravens and Bengals. They just played last week, and they're playing this week again. The Bengals controlled the game last week, but still, I mean, at times the Ravens kind of came in and scored some points. I mean, their third string put up 17 points against the Bengals. I mean, it was 27-17 win. I mean, the Ravens defense is very good, so if the Ravens can get a good offense rolling, I mean, the defense gets more rest. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, man, this was a hard one to call. I think it's probably the hardest one to predict, just because I do think it could go either way. Like, I think the Bengals could run away with it, or it could be a close game and the Ravens could win. Lamar Jackson, who knows with him? He's missed a lot of time, but if he can come out, make some explosive plays, Mark Andrews gets going. I mean, if their third string was able to put 17 up a week later, I bet Lamar could do a good job too. Joe Burrow and those guys have that experience from last year, and they're playing at home. So I'm going to give them the edge here, but I do think it'll be a closer game than what people probably think.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's going to be a lot closer game. I mean, we could see an upset here, but also I do think the Bengals at the moment are the best team in the AFC and probably the favorites to win the AFC in a lot of people's minds, as they're now, like 8 wins in a row to end the season. I mean, that's just crazy.
Now moving on to the best game of the wild card round, I think. Buccaneers at home against the Cowboys. Once again, the Cowboys coming in, they've had a great regular season. Their offense has been good. Their defense has been solid. They are missing some guys, but, Brady, he's the GOAT, man. People have counted him out. He knows what to do. This is another wild card game for him. I am going to go with the upset. I think that Dak Prescott, I think he comes in and he plays another bad game. I think you can make the argument, other than like Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, like you could say he's up there with those guys for being overpaid. I think he comes in, he throws 2 interceptions in this game, and I think that the Buccaneers win at home with Brady.
Yeah, Dak has not looked good all year this year. I mean, I know the Cowboys have been winning games, but like throwing a pick every game this year, and you lead the NFL in interceptions while missing 5 to 6 weeks. I mean, like, that's just terrible. And I do see now if this was switched around, if the Cowboys had the home field advantage, it could be a different turnout. But I can't see Tom Brady losing in the wild card in Tampa Bay. I mean, Tom Brady's just the GOAT. I mean, he still has a very solid offense and solid defense. I mean, they've struggled this year. I mean, but I think they've really turned it around. They've gotten back to a little more form than what we're used to from the Bucs these last few weeks. So it'll be a very interesting game. I mean, I do think it's gonna be a close one still, but I do think the Bucs will come out and win. I mean, I just can't see Tom Brady losing this game.
We probably saw Rodgers' last game as a Packer. We could see Lamar's last game as a Raven in this wild card. And once the Buck, I think they get past this round, but once the Bucs are out, this could be Tom Brady's last turn as well. So this will be a fun playoff year to watch for sure.
Yeah. All right. So with that, that'll conclude our first episode of Off the Record with A&A. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we will be talking more about college basketball later in the week, and we'll get you next Monday or Tuesday with episode 2, and we'll recap the NFL